Hello, YouTube friends. I think we're live. Let's see here. Let's monitor it a little bit, see where we're at. If you can hear me and see me, go ahead and mention it in the comments, and that'll give me a sound check. Let's see here. Hello? Well, I hope you're all doing well wherever you are, and I hope that wherever you are enjoying whatever situation or circumstance you might find yourself in these unusual times. And I hope you're drinking out of one of these, a Cichlids and coffee cup, which is available at the Teespring site. Now, first off, I want to welcome all of you who are on the stream, and I want to welcome those of you who are helping me out today, and those are my wonderful moderators, Candy, of course, the wonderful Candy Overhauls, GP, if you're there, and Denny, and of course Kevin Green. Denny Riddell and Kevin Green. Thank you so much for moderating, my friends. You are very appreciated. You keep things moving very nicely. And also a big shout out to those of you who support the channel with things like Teespring purchases and super chats and that kind of stuff. It's very appreciated. I really do appreciate it. So with that being said, let's do this. Let's do this cool transition. What do you say? It's like it relaxes me for some reason. I find it very relaxing. And so we have a few things to go over today. I want to thank those of you who have watched some of the videos. Of course, I wasn't available last weekend. I was away with my family. That picture in the picture in the thumbnail was taken at Morro Bay. For those of you who are familiar with California, the California coast, Morro Bay is just a gem. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's full of otters and seals and harbors, and it's just beautiful. Unfortunately, a lot of our favorite spots, of course, were closed because of what's going on. So we didn't get a chance to stop at some of our favorite restaurants, things like that. Some of the coffee shops are open. Maybe those have been deemed essential. So that was good. But for the most part, it was pretty shut down, and people were walking around with masks. Even though the beach, when we went on the beach, there was no masks on the beach, and people were just, were hanging out and having fun, and we were able to walk on the beach. And the sheriffs up in the Morro Bay in the Pismo Beach area, which is where we were staying on the sand in Pismo Beach, the sheriffs patrol the shoreline. They actually drive on the beach, and they would come by and they would wave at us and say hi and stuff. And so it wasn't as Gestapo-ish as you might imagine, as some of the posts on social media might indicate. Even though California is, I suspect, will be very far behind states like Florida and Arizona, Nevada, states that will open up early. California will probably be one of the last ones, and why, I'm not sure. Numbers seem to indicate that it should, but who am I? So let's talk a little bit about what it is that was going on while I was away. And there were a few topics that I explored in videos while I was gone. And those included, where I buy my fish. And that was definitely not a knock on any other fish provider, anyone who wasn't included in there. The truth is that a couple of the fish that people consider rather, rather spectacular in the collection, a couple of those were picked up by Tampa Bay. The only reason I don't promote Tampa Bay really that much anymore is because they did make mistakes on I think through about 2 or 3 orders there were mistakes, and so after a while I stopped recommending them. But some of the fish I got from them, like the Fusco in the tank behind me, the sand diver in the 100 that you'll see later in today's presentation, in today's live stream. Those were from Tampa Bay, so I didn't include them in there. I might have forgotten to mention a couple sources, but definitely the ones that I did go into. Trevor O'Shea at the Wonder of Cichlids, very dedicated to what he's doing, and very much a pro at what he does. I'm going to make an adjustment here so I can monitor the chat a little bit and see what you folks are into. Just move this monitor so it's a little bit more ergonomic here. Let's see. Bear with me. So I update this thing. Okay, all right. So Trevor O'Shea, definitely Josh over at Cunningham, Cunningham Cichlids, definitely the Cichlid Shack. Live Fish Direct, Dave's Rare. I mean, these places are all in, and you've heard me say it before. I mean, they have the investment, they have the tanks, they have the equipment, and they're all in, and that's the kind of people I like to buy from. Trevor O'Shea coined a phrase that I like. He called it pop-up vendors. People that just show up and they're offering fish at spectacular prices, and you go, oh my goodness, and you buy a whole bunch, and half of them arrive dead, and you never hear from the guy again. Or the order never arrives, and your money's gone, and the page is gone. You can't find with the person. So I like to deal with folks that they've made a personal investment of time, energy, and money into what they're doing, and they have a reputation to think of and to safeguard, and that's where you get into people like James at the Cichlids Shack, Trevor. Certainly Josh. I mean, he's expanded. Cunningham expanded his fish room tremendously. Dave's Rare. He's a big participant in the fish community, doing helping with fish that are endangered, things of this nature. Working on breeding. I mean, I had a chance to meet him at the American Cichlid Association meeting very briefly, and anyway, so those are the ones I went into in that video where I buy my fish. Sometimes when people buy fish that way, they're a little bit concerned about the shipping cost, and that is a reality of buying fish that way. That's the advantage of having a good local fish store, and I have a few. I have a few around here that I picked up some nice fish from, and so, but sometimes there's a fish you just can't find locally, and you really want it, and so you have to turn to internet providers. And that's where you look for a quality vendor. But I have a place called Glendale Tropical. I have several places. CK is real nice. When I went to go visit them, the aquarium depot over in San Diego. And of course, and so there are some good local choices around here. Some of them are a little bit of a long drive. But it's great. It's great to be able to just go see a fish, buy it, and bring it home. Put it in quarantine, and as opposed to buying a fish, paying another $30, $40, $50 for shipping, waiting, and then if there's an issue, everything's handled long distance. So anyway, local fish stores are definitely number one. But if the fish you want is not available, definitely the ones I talk about in that video will take care of you, and they'll stand behind their product. I talked also about too much cleaning. I got into the idea of too much cleaning, and because I get asked every now and then, I get asked, is it okay if I service my filters and do a water change and a vacuum. And you know, I think it's wise to space things out a bit, you know, space them out just a little bit, and that way you don't necessarily you don't necessarily shock the system or possibly shock the system. And but the way I service my canisters, I do fill up a couple buckets of water so I can rinse and then store the beneficial bacteria media in tank water. So I get a little bit of a mini water change whenever I service filters, because I have to run fill up a couple buckets. So I get a small percentage water change occurs. So I went into that a little bit. I don't do necessarily a very deep vacuuming when I'm doing when I'm servicing the filters. I'll pull some water from the tank, maybe do a very light surface, just where there's noticeable detritus, or if there are any pockets in the aquarium that I know tend to gather detritus. Like some of you have dead spots in your tanks, and that's where, like for example, in my 100, it's the back right corner. There's a little bit of a dead spot there where stuff will settle, and so I'll just kind of suck that up, but not do much more. Yeah, and of course with sand, one of the advantages of a sand substrate is you're not really pushing your siphon tube down into anything, because all you'll do is suck up sand, fill your bucket with sand. So the advantage of sand is that waste lays on the surface and is very easy to scoop up with about a half-inch gap between your siphon tube and the surface of the sand. So what I'll do then is just do a very light vacuum on that sand without disturbing it. I'm trying to grow, in the deeper parts of the aquarium where there's about 2.5 to 3 inches of sand, like in the right side of that tank. I'm trying to cultivate some anaerobic bacteria deep in the sand bed, so I don't mess around with that sand. And I'm going to be adding more sand to that tank as soon as I find some good quality black sand. Black Aragonite is almost impossible to find. If you know where to get black Aragonite, mention in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. I can't find black Aragonite. Last time I got a hold of some, it actually turned out to be more gray, more of a dark gray than black. So if there's any black Aragonite out there, clue me in. I'd love to hear about it. So that you can see those videos, 4,700, 4,700. It's like the same people just sort of rolled over and but so they did okay for being out for a few days. And then the best filter for your aquarium was over 5,000 as of yesterday. So those videos have done okay in viewership. I appreciate you folks that took the time to watch them. And on the best filter for your aquarium, I mean, really what I was talking about was dialing in the amount of filtration, or how much water turnover is going to be occurring when you're when you're set up. How much water turnover do you need? Do you want? And and of course, when you're setting up a tank, you have to look at the load, things of that nature. If you're going to have a tank with, let's say just for example, 50-gallon tank with a dozen neons and a lot of plants, you could probably turn that water over, about 3 to 5 times, and you'd probably be okay. In other words, you could have 3 to 5 gallons per hour of turnover of that 50-gallon tank per hour. You'd probably be all right with that kind of a bioload. You throw a bunch of cichlids in there, 15, 20 cichlids, that's a lot of cichlids for a tank that size. And of course, no plants, because they destroy plants. And you're going to have a lot of ammonia production, you're going to have a lot of waste production, and they're probably going to be eating heavy protein. And you better be turning that water over closer to 10 times per hour. So you better be getting into the 500 gallon plus gallons per hour turnover with your filtration. And that was the point of that tank was coming. I mean, the point of that video was coming up with the right sort of the right combination and dialing it in. Now, you're better off, in my opinion, you're better off going a little bit on the heavier side, than on the lower side, because what that does is it gives you the flexibility of adding more stock, and by if there's such a thing as overfiltering, you then can move that system over to a larger system later, and you'll be okay. You'll actually you're not going to have to run out and buy a bunch of new filters and stuff, because you overdid it on the first tank, and then when you upgraded, which is almost inevitable, people love to upgrade, you end up with filtration you can just bring right over, and then maybe get a smaller filter for the tank that you moved from, and use that as your grow out, or as your as a quarantine tank or something. So we had those videos, and we also had. I was able to give you a bit of a mock live stream with the huge fish. I wanted to put something out at the usual time. One of the big rules in YouTube, in the YouTube world, the YouTubers world, is to be consistent with posting, and be on a schedule that people can somewhat predict. And so I didn't want to leave that Saturday 10 a.m. slot entirely empty. So I put together that video on I think it was the huge fish. Let me see, or maybe it was my top 7. No, top 7 I think was Sunday. Let me see. Anyway, one of those was at the 10 a.m. slot, and the huge fish, it's over 6,000 views. That's pretty good. And the top 7 fish for a mid-sized tank is about 2,900. And so I was talking. That one did the best. I don't know. People they like huge, and I don't. If Kevin Green is on here, don't make any jokes. So at any rate, the that video did well, and by the standards of my channel. So at any rate, that's what was going on, and I appreciate all of you that stopped by and watched those videos, that share those videos. Like if you belong to groups, or you have fish friends and you share the videos, or you share this live stream, that's awesome. So I really appreciate that. Let me just check here. Let's take a quick look here and see who's. I know Aquaballs was first, and usually what I do is I send out some stickers to whoever's first. But I know you have stickers. I gave you some over at Nolan's, and which, by the way, is also another one of my very favorite local fish stores. A bit of a drive, like 45 minutes to get there, but Nolan's over in Santa Ana, wonderful fish store. Great people, a great guy, and a great team of people down there dedicated to quality fish and taking care of fish, doing a real good job servicing their clients. That's real important to me. Chevy Fish, hey Chevy Fish, El Billy Espinosa, love that name. What beach will you be at? Well, I'm actually back in town. I'm actually in town now, and no longer at the beach. Unfortunately, I would have loved to have stayed there much longer, but I had to come home. I see that Candy is on the job. Candy, thank you so much. You're very appreciated. You know that. Kenny Mack, good morning from Oregon. Hello, Kenny. And Juan Davia, good morning from Farmersville, California. Farmersville, where's that? It's got to be in the central area of the state. And anyway, I drove through the middle of California on the way to Pismo Beach through, I think it's by Lake Cachuma. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Let's see, all the rain we had. Let's see, Tiffany White. Hello, Tiffany. And R. Baglio, good morning, my friend. Medco 74M, all good here, very good. I can hear you, Ben. Thank you so much for that, folks. Hey, Tom, from one of my favorite places in the world, Malibu, California. And Edgar in Houston, I hear that Texas is opening up, and it's going to be business as usual in Houston, and I'm very jealous. Let's see here. Brockton Berkey sold my cichlids and tank to pay for more corals and saltwater reef fish and equipment. Still listening to Ben. Well, thank you. Thank you for hanging out. You know, it seems cichlid centric. My channels and everything I do cichlid centric, if there's such a word. And but the truth is what I end up talking about on my channel is it's very diverse, kind of goes all over the place, and so it's not very entirely about cichlids, as you very well know. And I appreciate you continuing to hang out. And I'm a little sorry to hear that you sold your cichlids. Maybe later you can set up another tank. Hey Zen Ginger, good to see you here. And I'm working my way through the chat right now. Mazane Amon, hello Ben. Jonathan Jonathan from Cape Town. I've heard Cape Town is beautiful. I have a friend from there. He said what he loved about it was being able to buy fresh fish. Every day they bring in a catch. You go down right to the shore and buy it. He said he really missed it. And 7 p.m. in France, Loop Guru, hello Loop, all the way from France. I hope things are going well in France. The situation around the world is a bit wacky, to say the least. Hey GP, Kevin here. Dean Declerk, Ron at Aquarium Fish Depot is an awesome guy. Love that shop. Ron at Aquarium Depot, I've heard of him. I think I've even had some interaction with him in the past. I haven't had an opportunity of buying fish from him. Someday I'll probably check him out. Marty Borst from Michigan, is it important to keep 5-gallon buckets around? A friend of mine told me to do so. Your tanks are beautiful. Also, is there a way for me to make donations to for your YouTube? Well, there's a thing called Super Chats. You can do Super Chats right here on the live stream. And if you feel very generous, you can also PayPal me at... I'm just kidding. Don't PayPal me. You can use Super Chats here if you like. And that's very sweet of you to say that. I really appreciate that. And let's see here. All right. So let's talk a little bit about favorite fish, which is today's topic. And before I get into that, though, I want to ask you folks, because usually at this juncture I would get into what's coming up. And I was away, and I was very busy, and so there's the queue, the hopper, the queue is kind of empty right now. And so I wanted to find out from you folks on this live stream, what topic do you want me to actually get into? If you could select the next video that I release, what would be the topic? Go ahead and note it in the, if you're with me here live now, just go ahead and mention it in the chat. If you're watching it on the replay later, go ahead and mention it in the comments. What's the next video that you would like to have me put out? And if it inspires me, I'll go ahead and put it together and possibly have it out tomorrow or Tuesday. So go ahead and throw some topics out there, and I'd like to hear from you what it is that you want to hear me talk about. And very often that's where I get most of my ideas anyway. I go through your comments, and I go back and review what some of you are saying on the comments, and a light bulb goes on. Or I'll be watching somebody else's video, and they'll say something, and it'll trigger something. So I never know when inspiration is going to hit me. But what do you folks want to see me talk about? So let's talk about what I consider some of my favorite fish, and we're going to start off with this guy right here, and this is called a gar. And as he gets older, his face will start to become more and more elongated. And this one was picked up from the Cichlid Shack, from James over at the Cichlid Shack. and he was just a little gray juvie with no indication as to whether or not he was a male or a female. And at any rate, he's you can see what's happening to him. I mean, look at the pattern on the patterns that are starting to take shape in the dorsal fin, in the tail, and the markings, the stripes in the anal fin, the lines on the pecs, the beautiful deep blues, almost purple and electric green in the face, in the lips, and he's not fully colored up yet. He is still a young gar. He'll probably end up, around 10 inches. He'll end up, or maybe larger, and so he's just starting to blossom. He was moved to the 100-gallon because he just got too big for the 60, and has settled in there very, very nicely. And that's a Malawi Gar. What do you think about that fish? I mean, I think he's just striking. He's becoming one of my favorites, and it's been just a lot of fun watching him blossom, which is one of the things I talk about when you talk about buying mature adult males versus buying them young and rolling the dice. And so this one came in from James at the Cichlids Shack. We could have rolled the dice, and I grew him out, and it's like I won the jackpot with this guy. I mean, he's just really something special. So if you have a tank, eventually he'll have to go to the 150 because he'll get big. I haven't heard a lot of stories about them becoming very, very aggressive. This one is rather mellow, but just on sheer size, he's going to have to go over to the 150, and hopefully he'll adapt okay in there. You also see a couple other of my favorite fish photo bombing here. The benga, the yellow benga, and of course the trout is not the trout rather, but the sand diver, and yes, I do have some clown loaches in there. Every now and then people give me a hard time. Why do you have clowns in there with your cichlids? And I got them a long time ago when I was young, and I had a crazy mixed tank, and I've just never had the heart to get rid of them. They're los tres amigos, and maybe they don't belong with cichlids, but they hold their own. They never show any signs of distress or being beat up, and they're just really, really special fish. I don't want to get rid of them necessarily. Maybe at some point, if I get a planted tank, maybe I'll move them over. But it's been like 5 years, I think, 4 or 5 years that I've had them. I think they've become a bit acclimated to the harder water, higher pH. So I don't know. Maybe moving them back to a softer water, lower pH may be traumatic for them. I don't know. If you have experience with that, something like that, where you've started another tank and moved a fish that had been in hard water for a long time, and let me know how that went. How that went for you. There are, of course, other fish in that tank, in that 100-gallon. That hawk, of course, that bicolor 500, that OB. I mean, they're just spectacular in my mind. But this Angenus, Exochromis angenus, that I picked up from Josh Cunningham at Cunningham Cichlids, just a very, very unique fish, very different. Eventually, over time, he'll start getting some blue in his body. Right now, he's still relatively young. They can get up around 10 inches. They can be pretty hefty. He's got a little mustache. One of my kids named him Errol Finn, as opposed to Errol Flynn because of the mustache. Calls him Errol Finn. But just a very unique fish, a bit of a unique shape in the mouth and head, and great markings on the anal fin, great markings starting to show up on the dorsal. A bit slow to grow. They do take a while to grow, not as long as a flame tail or something like that, but certainly they do take a while to grow, and a bit rare, a bit hard to get a hold of. If you can find one, snatch them up, because they're not easy to get a hold of. Maybe they're becoming more popular now and more available, but I certainly haven't seen them listed in a lot of fish keeping catalogs, or in the stock of fish. The other fish that I'd have to include in my let's see here. Other fish that I'd have to include in my list, I'd have to include that definitely I would have to include the Jallow reef. I mean, the Jallow reef is, if you can get a hold of a Placidochromis Jallow reef, and you don't have a tank that's full of Venusis and Livingstonia and stuff, because they're kind of placid. Even though that Johnsonite that I used to have could hold his own, but they're a little bit on the placid side. But get a hold of one. Get a hold of a Jallow reef if you can. Sunshine Benga, beautiful fish, and love that fish. And of course, that eye biter is just insane. I mean, it's just an insane looking fish. And but those are some of the other fish that I would consider are my favorites. Of course, there's more. There's more fish than just that, and but I have, of course, some fish. If we go over to the fish cam, of course, in this tank I have some good stuff going on, and that Imperial that Imperial Tiger that's right there on the screen, and that let me move the camera a little bit closer. This is going to seem a little jerky here for a second, but let me get just a little bit closer there. So anyway, that Imperial Tiger is starting to get some beautiful blue in the face, and starting to get a little bit of the yellow in the body that you see with Imperials. And he is quickly becoming one of my favorites. The fire hap that is surprisingly chilled out in the bottom right-hand corner there is also just spectacular. Both of those fish were from Live Fish Direct, and you can see that fire hap, just a big, hefty fish that really holds his own. And that Livingstonia, I know GP sometimes asks me, is that a male or a female? That Livingstonia is definitely a male. He was very, very colored up, and when I brought him over, he colored down entirely. You can see that big, massive trout I got from on the upper left-hand corner there. Definitely one of my favorites. A big trout I picked up from the Wonder of Cichlids. Just a gorgeous fish. And there, peeking his head over in the bottom left, you have the Fusco that I grew out from like a 1-inch juvie from Tampa Bay Cichlids. There's the electric blue. That's actually the smallest, one of the smallest fish in the tank, but he holds his own. What he lacks in size, he makes up in attitude. And just a gorgeous shade of blue. There's that massive eye biter that I picked up from Josh, chasing that poor trout around. The trout is at this stage longer than the eye biter, and eventually will be bigger. I think they get up to as much as 14 inches in captivity. So here's the question. The real question here is what is your favorite fish? And so let's take a look here, and let's check the comments here. I want you to tell me what your favorite fish is, and why that's your favorite fish. Let's do a little fish survey here, and my favorite is the blue neon and the flavescent. If you're talking about my fish there, yes, those are Mazane Amon. Those are two of my favorites as well. When I talk about favorites, it's a little bit it's a little bit deceptive, because I really like all of them. I'm crazy about all the fish. There isn't even ones that are not colored up or dull or have turned out to be females. I mean, I like all of them, and there isn't one that I would say I don't like. But you know, we all have a fish or two that we really really enjoy, that we really like, and that has really become special to us. And that's the fish I want you to talk about in the chat or in the comments. You know, tell me about what fish. Let's see, Autopharynx tetrastigma. Justin Bombs. You know, that's a fish that I'm going to be getting again, and probably after we end up relocating. And I'm going to definitely add that fish to my collection. Beautiful fish, sort of a translucent color throughout the body. You know, I had one before. You can go back in my old videos and see him. I featured him a lot. Raised him up from a small fry. He lived a pretty long life and then finally passed away. But gorgeous fish. Autopharynx tetrastigma. If you can get a hold of one, definitely get one. They're just gorgeous. And they change color. They get dark. They get light. When I moved him from the 100, put him here, he became very light and translucent. Just beautiful. Like gems. And Marco, he likes the fear. Yeah. Yep, that's a beautiful fish. Hey, James. I see James is hanging around. Yeah, I dropped your name a few times there, buddy. You should just sponsor. I mention you so much, you should just become a sponsor for the live stream. Let's see here. Favorite. Medcal 74M. Favorite is my OB. Fluobrina. I know I butchered the spelling. I mean, I love OBs, and sometimes OBs are spectacular. I love when they're yellow and blue in the body. They can be just really, really pretty. And Malawi Trout. Mike likes Malawi Trouts. I love the Trouts. I mean, they get pretty huge, and I'm a little bit concerned that mine is going to be too big for a 6 foot 150. And these are the kind of decisions I'm being forced to have to deal with here. Let's see here. Jim Salt, digging my Tropheus colonies. Tropheus are beautiful fish, really, really pretty fish. Back in the day when I didn't really know really what I was doing to a large degree, I threw some Tropheus in with with other types of fish, and they didn't do too well. But yeah, there's some beautiful Tropheus. Darren says the blue Nagara is his favorite. Yeah, the blue on that fish is... Some of the blues you get in fish are just amazing. Mike's Aquariums, love the trout. Wish I had one for my aquarium. Just picked up a 180 with large cichlids, haps, some peacocks, and a big Madagascar. Well, you know, if you go back to that video on where I buy fish, I'm sure one of those can set you up. You know, maybe James, who's on the stream here. James, do you have any trouts in stock? If not, probably Trevor, where I got mine over at the Wonder of Cichlids. Aqua balls. My favorite fish is a fish that I don't have anymore. You know, it's funny you say that, because when I look back on my life, the Rasabora, there was a Rasabora that I remember when I was about 5 or 6 that I had, and you know, he was very cute, and I was just fascinated by the pattern on the body, and I can still remember, like, you know, having to kind of like, you know, pull up and look at the little tank, and yeah, we all sort of have this one or two special fish that inspired me, and it gave me the bug for fish keeping, and I've never lost it. I've had that bug my whole life. And there's been some gaps in there because of travel schedules and things like that where I didn't have tanks, but I always get back. I always get back to it. Chris Churchill, I watched one of your videos about nitrates. Don't have cichlids, just a community tank, but my nitrates were running at 40 to 80 per million. I've introduced moss balls and now it's 15 to 20. Well, it looks like the moss balls are doing some good work there. Certainly look at, I mean, how much water do you change and how often do you change it? I would probably do maybe a couple 60% water changes over a 2-week period. Just kind of bring it down, add some more plants. Obviously, plants worked, but 40 to 80, some people would argue that at 40 to 80, you really don't have anything to worry about. I've had some people say that it's over 100 that you have to start to be concerned. Then I've had other people say that they like to keep it at around 10 parts per million. So it's a thing that's sort of open to debate, this whole nitrate thing. And but it looks like those moss balls are working, and looks like you're on the right track there. Javier likes blood parrots, it looks like. They're pretty dramatic. I've seen some pretty big ones, massive ones. Cichlid Shack. I only have 3-inch unsexed F1 trouts at the moment. Well, there you go. There you go. Pick up a trout from James. Pick up 3 or 4 of them, and then keep the most spectacular male, and you'll be able to sell the other ones. Maybe James will buy them back from you. Marco has 2 questions. Marco, the first answer is yes, I want all males. I think when there's females, it does kind of stir them up a little bit and can create some breeding activity. You'll get more beautiful colors if they're in breeding dress, but you'll also get a lot more aggression, and that aggression can be pretty wild. So I try to keep all males. There may be a female Bucochromis notitania in there. I haven't determined yet whether or not that's a male or a female, but I try and keep all males. And way back when, I bought a whole bunch of Caribbean Sea cichlid substrate. What they called was Malawi cichlid substrate, and it was this stuff that you see in the tank behind me, which is shells and coral, and it was designed to help maintain a high pH and add minerals to the water and things of that nature. Looking back on it now, I think sand. I think sand is, especially in the direction and the way I've been thinking recently about creating an anaerobic section in the substrate that would be stable and would not be messed with. Yeah, I think sand would be, if I was restarting, I'd go sand. I'd probably go sand. Even though I love when the fish move the stuff around and they carry the big chunks around, or sometimes a trout will get a big mouthful and then dump it, and it dumps it over another fish. And it's like it's snowing. But so it's pretty comical to watch them move these big chunks around. Back when I had Mabuna, and they were making caves. You can see this in some of my much older videos going back several years. I had a yellow electric yellow lab Mabuna, and he was always building caves, and so he was constantly carrying these big shells around, and it was just hilarious to watch. He was like it was like watching a beaver build a dam. He just would never stop. And so anyway, so it has its advantages. It does add calcium, magnesium, but you can also get that with Aragonite, an Aragonite substrate. Some people will use, play sand. Some people use blasting sand. Some people will say that sands that are not made for tanks can have sharp edges, but other people have told me that they've used play sand and blasting sand for years and have never had a problem. They've never seen irritation on the fish's lips or gills or anything like that. So, so let's see here. Aqua Balls, can we get the link for Ben's merch? Yes, underneath every one of my, I'm sure Candy can provide you with that. There's a store. I have a store now, and a Teespring store. And under any of my videos, you can click on the Teespring link there, and there's tank tops, T-shirts, there's a hoodie, and of course there's the mug that you can get, which has my old Taiwan reef, and it has the eye biter on the other side, and it says we all learn from each other, which is kind of like a logo in the channel, catchphrase. So let's take another look at the fish here, and let me see if you folks have any more questions for me. What are we up to? 83 watching. Let's see. If you have any questions, let's go ahead and open this up to questions. And I'll be checking the chat here, and I'll be able to respond to you. Marco, you're welcome. And if I've missed any super chats, I am sorry. I have not been watching the chat the entire time. Let's see. KG Cichlids. Thank you, KG. Every little bit helps, my friend. And let's see here. All right. If I missed any super chats, I'm sorry. I did see that one from KG. And it looks like one of them just landed here. Those super chats are appreciated. GP for $5. Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. You've been a great supporter of the channel, and I do appreciate that quite a bit. All right. Medkov 74M. Medcow? Am I pronouncing that right? 74M. You know, I would go with again, this is just something that I've been thinking about recently, and I talked about it in a couple of videos. I would suggest going with a 3-inch. 3-inch. 2 to 3 would probably do it, but the truth is that you can't help but siphon out a little bit of it from time to time, so you will be losing sand in small amounts over time. So I would say 2 to 3. I would say go with 3 inches of sand, and then don't mess with it. Don't rake it. Don't worry about gas pockets. Gas pockets are apparently gas pockets is an urban legend. Apparently those pockets that can form under a sand substrate will not harm your fish. And so don't worry about raking the sand, leave it alone. And what you'll end up having is you'll have an aerobic on the top. Of course, you'll have some aerobic bacteria, and as you go deeper down, you'll have anaerobic, and that anaerobic should help to convert and reduce nitrates in your aquarium. And so my next project is going to be a deep substrate, a 3-inch sand substrate, and my filters will probably be just sponge. They're just going to be sponge and floss. They're going to be used only for polishing the water. So let's see here. So that's my 2 cents on that. Certainly do do more research. Come up with your own conclusions. Like I mentioned, I gave a little bit of a disclaimer in one of my last videos where I said if it's working for you, don't change it, and just watch out what you hear on YouTube, because sometimes we might give advice that isn't necessarily going to work in your circumstances. There's other factors involved. I mean, what's the chemistry of your water? There's different things that you have to take into play. Your maintenance schedule, things of that nature. And let's see here. Cunningham Cichlids, 2 inches is deep enough. I'm thinking that, Josh. I'm thinking that 2 inches is good, 2 to 3. I'm just thinking that over time, with cleaning and sometimes the fish spit it into the filter intakes and stuff. So you're going to see that sand bed over time start to reduce a little bit, over a long period of time. So just to be safe, I'd go with 3. And now somebody made a very good suggestion. They said that around the filter intakes, put some rocks or maybe some black. If you, let's say you have a black sand substrate around the filter intakes, put some pieces of black gravel that is, you know, a bit bigger chunks, and just to prevent, you know, some stuff getting kicked up and going into your filters. I think sand getting into my Fluval was one of the reasons why the purge valve failed on me and started leaking, because then that sand serves as an abrasive. So if you do have a Fluval filter and you're doing a full maintenance, which maybe you do every 4 months, 3 months, 6 months, some of you every month, but when you do a full maintenance where you really take the whole thing apart, pull everything out, there's a little valve on the bottom of that Fluval. You can just push it in and turn that purge valve and pull it out and backwash it, and you'll be surprised, you know, what comes out of it. In my case, when I took it out to replace it, there was a fair amount of sand in there, and that sand was working as an abrasive. Every time I turned the valve, of course, it would sandpaper the inside, and eventually it failed on me and started leaking, and I had to replace it. Those valves from Fluval are not cheap. They're definitely not cheap. And so, but I do suggest you have a couple of them on hand, because they do fail. And an O-ring. Have some O-rings on hand too. Hey, Marty, thank you. Thank you for that super chat. Very much appreciated. I'm able to catch them now because I am looking at the chat as it flies by on a second monitor that I have here. Sean, I put the small universal rocks under my intakes. Helps a lot. FXs have their motors at the bottom versus Suns at the top and can become a problem. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. That sand's going to settle. You know, it's going to settle down there. And how often do you disassemble the motor on your Fluval? How often do you pull it apart from the canister, from the body, and you know, pull out the impeller and give it a good cleaning? I would say in my case, every other major cleaning, I'll take off the motor, pull out the impeller. It's a big magnet, it's a large impeller, and really give it a good wipe down, a good cleaning. These impellers, when they get covered up in goop and mulm or whatever you want to call it, they do lose some of their efficiency, and so that's something to keep in mind. So you do need to pull the impellers out. Same thing with your Suns. You know, it's on the top, and so you unsnap that and pull it out, and just make sure when you put them back that they're seated correctly in the little rubber tips. You push them all the way in. Make sure that the cap snaps into place. Otherwise, you're going to have a noisy filter. I mean, and also with your Fluval, be sure everything is, especially that O-ring that goes on the motor. Be sure everything's exactly where it needs to be, and that it's screwed down, not too tight, because you will crack it's plastic, and you're screwing in metal screws. But make sure it's very snug, or you'll get a slow leak. And ask me how I know. Let's see here. Javier says that 1 inch of dirt or red fluorite mix at the bottom, capped by 3 inches of play sand, is the best substrate for planter tanks. Or planted tanks, I imagine, is what you're saying. Now, see, some people will say, well, you really can't grow in sand, and but I've seen a lot of tanks that are like that. They have that dirt bottom, and that's where all the roots are in, and of course you can always go with with Anubias, where you have that rhizome above the rhizome, and then it shoots out the little hair-like roots, and that works as well. You don't even have to be in the substrate, really. You just be out and glue it onto decor. You can use super glue. You can glue that rhizome right onto your decor, and it'll shoot out the roots and start to grab whatever it is you glued it to. And so Anubias is kind of amazing that way. Let's see, Sean, motor removed every 4 or 5 months. 2 FX each gets cleaned every other month. Okay, good. That's a routine. Yeah, that's right, Kevin. On the Suns, very often when you try and pull it out, the magnet is so strong, you end up pulling out just the shaft, just with the. So you have to use a needle nose to pull them out. GP fluoride, excellent for substrate. It aids in nitrate reduction. Well, that's interesting. I wonder, how does it do that, GP? I mean, it actually absorbs. I mean, it converts nitrates. Does it make them gas off, or does it? That's interesting to me. Everybody's looking for the nitrate solution, right? All right. Hey, Jim. Thanks for that, Jim. Much appreciated. Some super chats are coming in. I appreciate the support. And the next video that you see, I hope, the next video that you see is going to be a heck of a lot sharper. I'm currently using Logitech cams, and they're good. They're supposed to be HD. But I've gone ahead and invested in a what is called a Sony 6400, which is a mirrorless camera, and that's going to be how I'm going to be live streaming from now on. I just have to get it all configured and set up correctly. I have to get a hold of what's called a capture card, which is a little hard to buy right now because everybody's live streaming with the COVID-19, I guess. So I have to put it together, but I'm going to be providing you folks with a much sharper, a much more colorful, and a better presentation. So I'm going to be investing some bucks and kind of going all in because I want you to be able to see these fish a bit more sharply. So those of you who super chat, thank you so much for that. You're helping out with my equipment purchases. Thank you, Kevin, for that. These Logitechs are not that bad. They're actually, I mean, the picture isn't that bad, is it? I mean, I don't know, maybe. The poor man. Oh God, they run about $100. The ones that I have, the higher end ones, run about $100 each. I mean, it's they're not necessarily, but anyway, at the time, doing it any other way was just not available to me. I mean, they're expensive, but yeah, they are sort of a cut rate way of streaming. So at any rate, on that note, thank you. On that note, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this live stream up. I appreciate those of you who joined in. I don't know, what did we get up to? 45 likes, 95 watching. I didn't create a very provocative, clickbaity, thumbnail. I didn't put something out there like the secret to filtration or something like that. So it's not a real click. I'm just happy to be back, and that's what you see in the that's what you see up here. It's just me being happy to be back and live streaming. And so we didn't get probably the 150 that I would have gotten had I put on there the secret of blah blah blah. So anyway, to those of you who joined in, thank you so much. You are appreciated. Thank you to my wonderful moderators and to those of you who super chatted today. And that's all for me. And I'm going to look at any suggestions that you made with regards to my next video, and I'll work on it tonight and have something for you by tomorrow morning. Thank you so much, everybody. And that's it for me. Bye-bye.